Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Altaf Shaik, and then I'm a senior researcher at the Technical University of Berlin. And I'm a telecom expert, let's say, for the last 12 years, and started my journey looking into passively sniffing 2G networks, and then from there, I went to do my PhD in 4G, and then now especially working for like 6G and Open RAN security as well. So I think most of you in the room, or like pretty much everybody who go to security conferences, like you submit bugs or you find vulnerabilities and then you report to your to the respective organization, and then you expect that okay, some of them will be fixed. Then yeah, you would be happy about it, or you get a bounty, and then everything looks cool. But after a while, you see that it's coming back again in another form, or you find the same bug in a different place, in a different product, or a different product that's supposed to be like the next version of, like the previous product. So, so in this case, what exactly is happening is that the vendor or the organization is not actually fixing the root cause, but rather like just providing a simple patch for that, so as to make the bug, like the one who found the bug happy, and then just keep the situation like cool. So this is what I am completely not happy about, especially in telecom networks. And I started to dig a little bit more deep into the existing networks that we have today. I mean, we still have 2G networks, don't forget about it, even though most of our phones like actually show 5G network, we still have 2G going on around us. But it doesn't mean that 5G is like very secure. So classic telecom attacks look basically like this. And by the tree, you can actually guess which country is that. So typically, there's a denial of service, interception, tracking, manipulation, backdoors, intrusion are like very, very classic attacks that you can find in telecoms. And starting with the first one, like one of the, here I'm actually presenting the two main problems that you find in telecom network, especially the first one with IMSI caches, and the second one is exploiting interconnect networks, like that is either SS7 or diameter protocols. So as we see, IMSI caches are like especially used by, well, criminal state actors as well, law interception agencies. And they work in different ways. One is either passive or as well as like active modes as well. And in passive, like they just capture some information, but hard to notice that there is like an IMSI cache running there. And in a semi-passive mode, they try to inject something into the network, which is, I think, the most, let's say, used mode for especially 2G IMSI caches. And there is like active one that offers like a full end-to-end network, basically. It might as well route some of your calls or SMS into real networks. And they can also act like, recently, you might have heard about like SMS blasts, like that just spread a lot of spam SMS into the regions, and I think some of them actually got arrested for that recently as well, also in UK. Relevance to 5G, yes, IMSI caches still can operate in 5G networks, and there is also a downgrade possibility. Then the next one, which I said, is signaling system 7, and the next version of it in LTE is diameter. And then in 5G, you have completely new version, which you call Secure Edge Protection Proxy. But I'm not going too deep into the details. But just to give you a short summary, SS7 is that's connecting the roaming interfaces, like connects to operators. And there's a lot of traffic going on that level. And it was possible, or let's say over the last 20, 25 years, it was possible to disclose subscribers' location, tap phone calls, intercept SMS. And there are a lot of private companies that actually offer SS7 service for some money. I mean, it used to be for a big lot of money, but as number of players got into the business, I think prices also went down. So you just need maybe a simple PC, and if there are no firewalls, you could easily find the node that is operating on SS7 and then inject SS7-related messages into the network. If you look at the generations, like how it actually evolved, so we have a mobile phone, base station, and the core network on the back end. There are like very much similarities between them, but of course, as an end user or someone like who has a little bit of knowledge on mobile networks, you expect that every generation is getting better and better, and the hope is like 5G provides you best security, for instance, because you have a lot of learnings from 2G, 3G, and 4G, and then you make sure that, yeah, you'll make things better in 5G. And there is like similar technical terminology, so general operations are similar between the networks. Cryptographic-wise, it's way stronger in 5G compared to what 2G provided. Then there are still voice calls, SMS, data, like pretty much the same stuff what you got in 2G, you also get in 5G as well, but improved connectivity or speed, data rate, better security and everything. And all this is done by like basebands, which are like pretty much even today are black boxes and are like also complex to reverse engineer as well. So you can easily expect that there are backdoors in your handsets and as well as backdoors in the network as well. And that's where like some of the bans actually started with respect to network equipment. And yeah, I will just go straight into the point, like why I started this, because I wanted to, when I started working on 2G, 3G, 4G and everything, I know like these bugs are in place, but when I moved to 5G, because this is a completely different technology, or it bases on completely something different, so I expect that the bugs would be new, and then it also like gives me an enthusiasm to work more on finding new issues as well. But you end up that still the old issues are not gone anywhere, they're still there, and they will definitely disturb the whole ecosystem. So for that, you need a kit. Well, if you are looking especially at 2G, you need these Motorola little handsets. Like it's super hard to find on eBay now, because I think I at least bought myself like 50 of them. So it's super hard to find them, and the problem with them is like the batteries. Like some of them, like deteriorated, like exploded. So it's always good to remove the battery from them, and then but there are like other ways how you can charge it and then get it running. And you need software-defined radio, a couple of phones, a powerful laptop, and not just handset. I mean, you need a handset to test, but especially if you're looking at some specific aspects like SMS, maybe you need a modem like that gives you more control on what you can actually send to the network and then receive back. And when you have an SDR, you need a GPS DO or something like that to actually get a better clock and efficiency or control over your mobile network as well. And I also have like a Faraday cage, like where I have to use it, I would definitely use that. And all this I put together, like bring my sources or open the hard disk from 2012, get them back up and running so that it works with the little Motorola phones, because they are very effective in testing 2G networks. And the focus points here are especially to see how the calls, SMS data, voice or Wi-Fi, IoT, all of these are protected now compared to what it was back, like let's say 10 years ago or 15 years ago when people started reporting that there are bugs in that, and then like maybe some of them got fixed, some of them didn't, some of them keep on repeating again. And I have some of the sources, like how do I collect this information? I do do the tests myself, or while doing pen tests, I also gather some information there. Then I have some clients who are very, very helpful in just hosting some of the sensors, because I cannot travel to every part of the world to do a test. So it requires somebody, because in some cases you physically have to be there to do a specific test, because you have to connect to the radio there. Then there are some knowledge sources such as GSM map, where you can open it, it's a web application, and then you can see some of the configurations of the network. But it seems outdated now because the last update was in 2021 or 22. And like I said, you need some toolkit. Then the age of the tests that I did are roughly from 1 day up to 1 year. And I cover a lot of networks, depends on where I travel as well. And I reported to some of the operators, and some are still in progress. So like I said, I first look at authentication, how better is authentication compared to what it was compared to now. So it looks like authentication is done just once. Well, let's say when you connect your phone, you obviously get authenticated. Maybe this is the first time of the day. And then after that, there is no authentication usually happening until you, let's say, go back to your home, which is maybe 60, 70 kilometers away. But as long as you're in the same area, networks don't try to re-authenticate you again. So there are a couple of reasons with this, but the analogy like here, like you can compare this with TLS. Like how often you make a TLS connection and then, yeah, you have the keys regenerated. Because if you don't do the authentication again, you're not generating the keys again, which means you use the same keys for the entire day, or maybe a couple of days as well, and depending on how frequent authentication happens. So I see that like the same applies in 2G, 3G, and 4G networks as well. Like they hardly do authentication. Probably there is something to do with energy consumption, because this is also a big topic in telecom networks with respect to energy consumption. Like the more frequent you do, yeah, of course, the more number of computations as well. And yeah, this could be one possible reason, but I don't think this is something or an excuse to skip authentication, because it's important to like generate fresh keys at least, maybe there is every 1 hour, or, I mean, I'm just saying 1 hour, but it can be even better as well. Because on one side, the specification is trying to make it better and better in terms of security, but you see that the implementations of reality is completely different. Yeah, this is like a capture on the left-hand side, which is about like authenticate or connection in 2G. And you see that there is a ciphering mode command, which is OK, like setting up the security. But in between, you don't see authentication, which means like you don't authenticate, and it means you don't generate fresh keys. So you're just reusing the keys. And on the right-hand side, I collected from one operator where authentication happens every time. And the entire process of registration consists of a lot of messages. And I think like they are putting actually effort to like re-authenticate every time and then generate fresh keys. And there is also like one operator who doesn't do authentication and then just reuses the keys. Then moving to privacy. Yes, we all want to keep our like identifiers like hidden when we are over the air, or let's say when the traffic is exchanged over the air, just like Wi-Fi. You want to be hidden. You don't want to reveal your identity. So there are couple of methods how privacy is actually achieved over mobile networks. So the first one is like you use a temporary identifier. Then second one, as well as like you try to avoid sending your permanent identifier frequently over the network, such as IMSI, or there is also like Wi-Fi as well, or also on SIP networks. Like you reduce the amount of transmission of permanent identifiers over the network. Then well, there are other ways like how privacy can be compromised just by, because if you're someone like who is just listening to radio networks, if you're, let's say, just dumping them on 2G, you see that there are a lot of SS7 triggered silent SMS, because normally a phone cannot receive silent SMS unless somebody is basically tracking it. And if you're someone who is observing the radio channels, you see that somebody, via the SS7 channels, exploiting, and then that is actually triggering silent SMS to be sent to the phone. But the problem here is like phone doesn't know that there is a silent SMS arriving. So this is another problem, because user has no idea whether his privacy is being compromised or is being tracked. So yeah. Funny, let's say observation is normally like temporary identifiers are something that basically should be random. So as you see here, like in 2015, I collected a set of temporary identifiers. Like this means nothing that these are the identifiers that are assigned to your phone, like on an hourly basis. And you see like there is hardly any change in that in the randomness among them. And I also do the same in 2020. Like it got better, but the same network for NSA, like which is like the latest 5G type of networks, it again, like, it's OK, not that bad. But when I do the same on 5G SA network, which is supposed to be the pure 5G network, I see the same pattern that I saw in 2015 repeating again. So this is more or less like they didn't really actually fix the root cause, which is the guy who's actually developing it doesn't get the point of like random identifier, like how it basically should be. So, or I'm just telling the guy, but it could be like the fundamental practice of software development is actually not changed. There are other ways like how location can be leaked on 2G networks. Just straight using a false base station, you just send it to the phone that you're interested in, then the phone will actually reveal you the GPS location. And well, of course, this has protection in 4G or 5G network. It's not that easy, but still there are a lot of phones that can actually just give you the location just like that. Moving on to encryption. Encryption, as you know, like how important is that like to actually keep your data secret, and there's also like a session key. This is also somehow linked with authentication, because if you don't do authentication, you're not generating new keys. And if you're not generating new keys, you're like just holding on to the strength of the keys, basically. And there are different ways how we evaluate encryption here. So it's based on the agreed security algorithm. So just like TLS, the client tells the server that I support these ciphers, and then let's set up security now. Same thing goes in mobile networks as well. The mobile says, like, I support these ciphers, and then let's now set up security. But what happens is that sometimes it's possible to downgrade that. And when I check the same with 2G, if you are a little bit into the telecom, you know that there are a couple of algorithms like A50, A51, A52, A53. And the 0, 1, 2 are pretty much like super weak. Like, you should not use them. And most networks use A53, or there's an upgraded version of it. You call it like A54. But it's almost possible with all the networks that I tested. It's possible you could make the phone use A50, so which means I use a small Motorola phone, just fake that I don't support any security algorithm. So in that case, what happens, like network would just say, OK, fine, like I would not do any encryption. Like, so let's use A50. And there are cases like where it's possible to use A51. And a couple of years ago, it was possible, like people demonstrated that it's possible to completely intercept calls that happen on A51 protocol as well. And this is about 2G. And there are issues with 4G, 5G as well. There are networks that still operate on null encryption algorithm on 4G and 5G as well. And that could be because maybe the network is not supporting it, or somebody misconfigured it, or probably some man in the middle is trying to manipulate the capabilities and then make the complete downgrade, actually. So this is a screen, like some of the traces from 2G, where the mobile phone is actually using A50. And then on the right-hand side, you see a small indication, but this is not actually from this phone. This is, if you remember, like the small Nokia handsets that used to indicate that, like many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, that used to indicate that if the call is not encrypted, it basically shows you an indication. But today, you don't have this feature on any Android or iOS, and there are certain reasons like why carriers don't allow you to see whether your call is actually encrypted or unencrypted. Unlike when you're using your browser, like you will definitely see if there is HTTP or HTTPS. This is a call where an operator is actually allowing A51. Well, technically, they should prevent the use of it. The problem of allowing these algorithms is like it gives an upper hand for IMSI catchers, because IMSI catchers can actually act as a man in the middle and then let your calls downgrade to use weaker encryption algorithms. The support of these algorithms makes IMSI catchers like more powerful. So there could be reasons like why operators are not getting rid of it. And encryption on 3G as well, there are some countries like that don't change, or that did not actually switch on encryption on 3G from what, like since 2014. It still remains the same. Maybe they don't have a 2G network. Yeah, that's true. So they still want to use 3G network. So the 4G network and the 5G network, when we tested, some of them were using no encryption. But when we reported it, I think the confrontation was like more or less, it was a test network that you actually tested, so it's totally fine. But it was actually not a test network. And I totally understand the difference between like a test network and the one in the production. So, right, this is what I showed was the contrast, which is OK with one operator and which is not OK with another operator. Encryption in 4G, don't believe that it's also like 4G is super secure. It's also possible that networks might not use encryption in certain cases. And as I see that, I observed a change, as I think most of our phones are now sitting on 4G. So we are rarely using 2G. So carriers tend to switch off certain type of protections for the network where there is less traffic. I can understand the reasons here. But I think at some points, like mobile phones do like shuffle from 2G or 4G networks as well. So it's important to maintain the actual security features in that specific networks. So here, what happens is so there is no encryption between the two handsets that are, for instance, like sending SMS or calls. Then another very important security feature is integrity protection. So as we see, so it ensures that there is no manipulation in between. So, well, it doesn't apply for 2G networks because there is no feature like that. But in 3G, there is certain integrity protection, so which means like all the communication is appended with a MAC. But it's more or less seriously considered from 4G networks. Like 4G networks provide a lot of integrity protection for a variety of messages, AS level, NAS level, in multiple levels. And it's also possible that networks can as well like bypass this protection. So which means if you bring a phone into the network and say that I don't support any encryption and I don't support any integrity protection, it is possible that the network will actually allow you to perform connection with or have a successful registration with the network. So this actually brings a bigger problem, because in such a case, somebody just have let's say somebody just has stolen certain level of authentication information from your phone. So it means like doesn't need to steal your SIM card, but they can just send a simple message to your phone and then get back certain authentication related material, and that can be sent to the network. And thereafter, the mobile phone, or let's say the attacker mobile phone, can have a successful impersonation of the victim, let's say. And this is totally not OK. And this was, let's say, first discovered in 2014, these bugs. And it was, majority of them, I think, they let's say, fixed in 2019, or they started to. Because it really takes a lot of effort. It's not just a simple update, and this is concerned with the base stations as well. So imagine how many number of base stations we have, and updating them. This takes quite a lot of time, actually, and a lot of money, obviously. And then, then coming to service availability. Like, we all want to have 24/7, like the phone is available with a specific carrier. Well, the best. We would always want to have 5G, or if not, let's say 4G. I think we all get pissed off if we see like 2G in our phone. And it is technically possible to just send a simple message to the phone, even in a 5G mode, and then bring the phone directly to 2G. So some of the bugs I myself reported. This is not just an issue in the implementation or configuration. This is something more or less related to how the architecture is. So even much harder to make a change or bring a change. So obviously, they couldn't bring a change in 5G. So this, which means like just sending a simple message can actually also downgrade the phone to even weaker generations as well. SMS. So if you know the backstory of SMS, it seems like in 1992, the first message was actually sent in UK by a guy named Neil, and he actually sent Merry Christmas. So that was the first SMS. But today, you know like how SMS could be exploited. Like we have it filled with a lot of spam. So SMS actually caught my attention very well, because you cannot just send. So it's not just one type of SMS. You have normal SMS, silent, spam, WAP, SIM-specific SMS. So a variety of SMS. But usually you cannot trigger them if you have a normal handset. You need maybe a special modem that can actually allow you to send abnormal message to another person, let's say. So application-to-person messages like that we receive on a daily basis from our bank or DHL, when we have like tracking updates, this is common, and then like we also expect them. But when it's possible that another person can actually exploit this feature, where somebody can impersonate, or let's say like spoof the call or spoof the mobile number of someone else, gets more dangerous, let's say. So I started to try all these variety of SMS, and some of when you say about like WAP push SMS, it can technically contain a link, and you know how it looks like, because I think majority of us have actually seen how a spam SMS looks like in real life. Sometimes it's also hard to identify as well, but I think there is quite a huge loss if you look at the statistics, like how SMS fraud actually affected. And it's not just in terms of like money, but there is also identity fraud, data theft, and SMS can also be used to like manipulate some of the configurations in the network as well. So, right. So some of the issues, I think SMS problem persists in majority of the carriers, but lately I see a lot of interesting actions coming from operators. Like they would like to have proper SMS filtering or firewalls that could actually allow or prevent the fraud in like on a large scale basis. So when you're trying out SMS, there are two things. One on the network side, because network is the one that is acting as the pipe that would send from point A to point B, and that's the place where some action or like some security action can be taken, but we see that's missing. And second is, when it arrives in your phone can have certain type of control and make sure that, or maybe apply some intelligence to see if this is a spam SMS or like help the user to make it to be like better secure, let's say. And I tried both of them. And for instance, like when I try a web push SMS, which is like just sending a link from my mobile phone number to someone else, and what I see is like even though when the SMS arrives in the phone, I see that well, if it's an unknown number, you see something like, or if it's a web push SMS, you see something like service nachrichten, so which means like service message. But when I try to save it into my contacts, I basically don't see the sender of the number. Though the network is actually sending this phone number to the victim phone, somehow the OS basically fails to bring out the phone number and then show it to the user. So in this case, it more or less looks even legit to the user that this has actually come from a specific Walmart, not actually from some random guy. And I tried to do the same on iOS as well, but I think it was a bit hard to get that. But I think I'm not giving up any soon. Right, so like I said, there are countries or carriers trying hard to make the SMS ecosystem better, because I think every day you hear a lot of them, a lot of frauds happening on that. So I think UK government is as well like pushing to make this even better. Firewalls. So this is nothing very specific to telecom. I think every day we deal with this in the life. So as you see, like mobile phone gets an IP, and this has a direct connection to all the backend nodes. And technically it can see, but if the network is properly configured, the phone should not see what are the backward connecting boxes. Like from the phone, you have base station, and from there are like a lot of middle boxes, and to the back end, there's like huge number of boxes involved, and like normally a phone should not basically see them. But out of curiosity, like we try to like ping scan and do all sorts of traditional Nmap style attacks, and then see what amount of information can we understand about the network or in the middle boxes. And it is also, and in many, at least in 7 out of 12 networks, we could see that some of the maintenance portals that based on SSH are actually accessible. And this is more specific to 2G, LTE, and NB-IoT networks. 3G is very difficult. I mean, it's hard to find some 3G networks alive. So yeah, mostly experiments were on 2G, LTE, and narrowband IoT networks. And yeah, traceroute was also possible. Then we could also discover a lot of other mobile phones, which means other peers. Also discover like a lot of middle boxes that will actually give you probably like banners like this, like legal notices. But I think none of them is actually monitoring, who is making an entrance into this. And another funny thing is that the SIM card with which some of them I tested basically don't have any kind of data or like load in them. So which means technically they should not be given any kind of data traffic, or like no IP data is available on them. But surprisingly, the recon traffic is basically not built. And recon traffic was always allowed. I hope it's not a honeypot, and then they are just trying to play me or outplay me. And but later, like I approached, and then so they actually confirmed that some of the nodes were exposed, and they were happy to fix them. Some of them also has like IPv6, which is even time-taking for me. So, but still, it's important to consider both, because eventually mobile networks will also switch to IPv6 as well. Caller ID spoofing. So it's maybe time to give up the circuit-switched calls, the traditional way that we used to call, and voice over Wi-Fi is getting so popular. So in some of the networks, we saw that it is possible to spoof the caller ID, and then you can pretend to call as someone. And exploiting this was, well, like not super easy, but because this is all related with SIP protocols, not just someone in the telecom, like somebody who has like a traditional IT background can also exploit that. And this is all about like what issues that were back in time and then are still active now. And we expect that with 5G, like things are getting better, and then like we would like to go in that direction, or like much better security direction. But 5G actually brings you a lot of worse threats as well, because it's trying to connect a lot of industries, automotive, healthcare, military, or marine systems, factories as well. And for the good or bad, like most of the 5G core is actually based on well-known protocols that basically everybody knows, something like HTTP, REST API, JSONs, containers. Most of us know all these technologies, and it also continues to use protocols that has a history of attacks, such as GTP, Diameter, SCTP. So they are still there, and I think they will also continue for 6G as well. And on top, like there is integration, like fallback integration with 2G, 3G, 4G networks. So 5G, the threat landscape is like even bigger compared to what we saw on 2G, 3G. So it's important to get things right from the beginning. And in many parts of the 5G network, I think the standard basically recommends to use TLS and IPsec, which are, I think, proven to be good security technologies, like overall outside the telecom networks as well. So they're trying to bring them and incorporate well into telecom networks. And I'd like to present some of the findings that we have in early 5G networks. And we see that some of the handsets are, again, going in the wrong direction. So it is possible to bypass authentication in some of the latest and popular manufacturer handsets, and also bypass the security mode commands. So I think these are very important to actually encrypt or authenticate a handset, basically. And we see that the wrong track has actually taken, and then which shouldn't be, because we learned a lot of things from 2G, 3G, 4G, and it's important that we get these things right, because there is also always like the specification, the 3GPP specifications that says it's important to get these things correct as we go from generation to generation. And we see like mobile phone locations can be extracted as well, and also like can be downgraded to 2G as well. And SMS issues still persist, because the problem of SMS like doesn't matter like whether it's 2G, 3G, or 4G, or 5G, because it's SMS, and it remained SMS even in 5G as well. And some implementations in mobile networks, yes, some of them fail to activate encryption in real networks, and some of them, like I showed in the beginning, that they do not properly generate random identifiers in the network. As we see, like the highlighted ones in the red boxes, these are the identifiers that are generated, 5G TIMC, but we don't see basically any difference, any bigger difference between them, and they don't completely look random. So this is not a good direction, actually. And not just, I think, like so far I've talked about call, SMS, and voice over Wi-Fi, but there is something new called IoT platforms that I think like will grow bigger in the next years as well, which is already bigger now. And this is more or less like integrating your applications into the mobile ecosystem. I mean, maybe you developed a lot of tech, a lot of IoT, and then let's say you're writing a lot of controls or software by yourself to control your devices. But what with IoT platforms is like operator will give you APIs, like you don't have to develop anything separately to control and manage them. They'll give you something called service APIs, and then you can technically use these APIs and then control all your video surveillance, fleet management, blah, 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 all sorts of devices. And this is purely going over APIs. And if you observe one thing, so there is now direct API access from externals into the mobile core networks. So this, again, makes things even like a bit more dangerous if API security is not correctly, if it's not correctly implemented. And we already saw some issues, actually, not just simpler ones, but some of the critical ones, such as like that has the vulnerabilities of OWASP top 1. So which means we could break authorization that was not correctly implemented, which is bad. And yeah, like some things to mention, such as like use of weak pass or like allow weak passwords for the platform. Like, I mean, a user would obviously want to choose select a weaker password. But as someone like hosting the platform, you should deny users like that use like weak passwords, and then but we try to correct all of them. Like we brought it out, we explained clearly to the respective platform providers all over the world, I think. And yeah, I think many of them are starting to bring a change. And if you look at, maybe if you know a little bit about 5G, you might know that there are two different types of 5G. One is 5G NSA mode, not that NSA, but it is like the non-standalone mode. Then the 5G SA is like just the standalone mode. And there are a lot of features in the pre-5G version, which so what I mean is like there are a lot of security features enhancements from 4G, and they are only available in the latest 5G or 5G SA mode, and not the 5G NSA mode. So it's too early to see all the security features in the commercial networks as well, because they are not there yet. So this is just a summary of like how, like when was the first bug actually got discovered, and then did it get repeated in the next generations, like 3G, 4G? And what is its presence now? Like, is it still active? Is it something that could be exploited, and with what level of exploitation? Sorry. So importantly, I think we see the flawed use of A51. A51, people said that this is bad, you should not use it. 2000, and 25 years later, like we still have A51 supported in the networks, and it won't go away. And this is one of the technique that is exploited by IMSI catchers. Like if A51 is there, A50 is there, it's good for them. And SS7 attacks, many, let's say, like security researchers also point out that SS7 firewalls fail because they don't deeply analyze. On top, like it's also affecting the performance and reliability of the system. Okay, coming back to reasons, because it's not just about like finding stuff and then like just complaining about it, but it's also important to understand like where is the stuff going wrong, and then like is there any way to correct it, or not entirely correct it, but at least be aware of it, so that like at least like the actual team is totally aware of the situation. So sometimes it's hard to patch, we totally understand, because these are devices that could be in the field, and most of them maybe they don't have, let's say, access to the internet as well. Or maybe don't have like the best maintenance tools as well. And another good reason on a technical wise could be lack of in-depth 3GPP specification knowledge, because these specs are like super huge, and sometimes like, well, even for experts, like this could be hard understanding them, and there might be sometimes like ambiguity in them. So it's okay, understandable. Then lack of security testing, or maybe like applying the fuzzing concepts, because they go beyond the traditional compliance or operational testing. Skill shortage, maybe some of them don't exactly know what is the impact of not applying a security feature. Lack of knowledge and skills from the outside world, because there are like two different worlds, and with 5G, both of them are trying to merge. So it's important that both worlds know what is the effect of not having a security feature, or why should you compromise that feature for, let's say, another performance or battery life, let's say. Lack of security controls. This is one of the common problems that I hear from a lot of vendors or operators, because they're not given enough controls from their vendors, or it's also like most of them look like black boxes, like most of the time. And if you would like to reverse engineer them, well, you might, well, it's hard to reverse engineer. That's like you have to put a lot of effort. But on top, if you put an effort, they might sue you as well. Then coming to political and regulatory reasons, like there could be internal policies depending on the country, like whether to have a security feature or not have one. And when we disclosed regarding the SMS issues in some countries, I think some of the carriers complained that they don't have the authority to look into the content of the SMS. So that actually prevents them from controlling some of the attacks. Then, yeah, like I said, for regulatory reasons, like you need to have certain type of issues in the network so that the law interception agency can actually take advantage of them. Then other issues, I think this is a design issue because networks are actually built, or telecom networks are actually built with implicit trust. So you trust operator one and then operator two trust each other, and then expecting that nobody would attack each other. So they don't, so this is how things are actually built. And how should we go? Like, what is our way? So we're in the phase of like total implicit trust, but I think it's important to adopt this zero trust. I mean, it's not that easy, but maybe that's the direction like we should be going. And if we look at these new networks that we have, we'll have obviously like new problems and then totally new type of attacks. So if you read a little bit of LTE research and what's happening there, now researchers are trying to exploit covert channels that, for instance, like exploit reserved bits to exfiltrate information from the handsets. This could be a backdoor as well. Or you might exploit the whole LTE spectrum to exchange peer-to-peer data, or like in the form of like hidden information. Then there could be like issues regarding supply chain. Well, I don't have to mention this like as something new, but supply chain, I think, has become one of the critical issues now, and many organizations or countries are also like trying to look deep into the telecom equipment and then just pen test or security test them so that they get things right, maybe from the beginning itself. Yeah, some action points for 5G, like how we should take forward. Supply chain, maybe some of you have heard about like the recent pager attacks, like how dangerous it could be, and maybe our handsets could, yeah, like see something like that, but hope not. Then security customization, because I know I can understand that it's not easy to apply security for all types of use cases, so it requires basically customization. For that, you need controls on top. Well, your vendor should basically provide you those controls. A lot of networks, a lot of base stations, like hundreds of, like millions of subscribers, yeah, automation kind of helps. And also like continuous monitoring. For instance, like we don't really see SMS being monitored. Maybe that actually could be a good step to actually monitor the content, not entirely for like different purposes, but to improve the security, let's say. Then testing all the elements in the chain, like starting from your handset core to the RAN and also the interconnect. So testing the entire chain probably is not enough in terms of like just compliance, but maybe beyond that actually helps. Then I recently started seeing that many operators get penalized for neglecting security or for certain issues going wrong, and then that has a huge impact in terms of like money and then also time. So many operators are also getting like fined for that. So here are like some of the different action points that I tried to give, and yeah, so that ends my talk, and then thank you for your listening. If you have any questions, like feel free.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. So I was told that during the COVID years, Israel used RILP to request the precise location data of all the headsets in the country for contact tracing. Do you know if any other country did something similar?
The other country that did the similar?
Yeah, using like RILP instead of like Bluetooth stuff.
Yeah. Should I name it? Like.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Do you know any? If there's.
I think even Russia did it during the war. So yeah,
okay.
It's pretty common to use that protocol.
Okay.
And I think 99% of the IMSI catching devices like has this capability. So yeah.
And do you know, like, is it technically feasible for like Apple and Google to expose the request to the user, since it actually requires participation, I believe, from the device?
I think they are not explicitly doing that, but you see the location going active, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an indication. For instance, like just dial emergency in your phone. You obviously see the location, what do you call, like icon or the notification that's appearing on the top for what, like 1-2 seconds, and then it's gone. So similar thing also happens when activities like this, like happen. So because they are tapping in the GPS chip. So that's the only control they have. And well, this is also something to investigate, like because different versions, different features. Because something that works in iOS 12 like does not work in like the later version. So same thing I see in Android as well. Like something that works in 12 does not entirely work the same way in 14. So you might see the notifications in some, and some may not. So.
Okay, thank you.
But this is again like creating panic for you. You want to get panicked, or?